While been talking a lot of Big Brother, but time to get back to some soap opera rankings for the month of August 2022. I am, however, under the weather, so my soap opera videos for this month might be on the shorter side. But I have enough energy to talk about the shit show that is Josh Griffith's Young and the Restless, which finds its way back at the bottom of the trash in last place in my soap opera rankings. This soap has basically come full circle to when I first started doing the rankings last year and when I started the rankings, and just basically for the year of 2021, Young and the Restless was in last place. It was the worst soap opera of 2021 because of Josh Griffith's writing and because he makes his show so boring. And at the start of this year, we started to see some changes. It seemed like CBS maybe was upset with Josh Griffith, and he actually started to write storylines. I know you would think as a soap opera needs storylines, but last year Josh Griffith didn't seem to think so. But we started to get some actually plotted out storylines during the spring into the summer, and it seemed like the show was improving. But like I said, for the month of July, once they killed off Ashland, they killed any momentum that the show had. And it's funny because I say the show has gone in a full circle because you could say that about Josh Griffith's writing. It just goes in circles. It doesn't really lead to anything ever. It certainly never leads to anything exciting. It certainly goes in a circle and doesn't veer off into drama. No, this show puts the lid on the drama as soon as it starts. They killed any possible drama with the show when they killed off Ashland. And people could say maybe Robert Newman wanted to not have a long-term gig in LA because he doesn't live in LA. And could they really recast the character again? I think I would have preferred that to this shit that we're getting. One of the many problems with this show is that we're once again getting back to the fact that the storylines either go nowhere or there's just not many of them. The same problem Josh Griffith has brought to this show since he came back to it. And I don't know why CBS, in general, I talk about this on Big Brother, they never want to make a change at the top when the show needs it. And Young and the Restless needs a change direly. The only thing the show has going for it now is Diane, but let's be real. That story has also lost momentum. All of it. I've been thinking, is it just me? Am I just the one upset that they killed off Ashland, and therefore, since that story lost all its momentum, I don't really feel like investing in Jack and Diane? And that could still be the case, but I don't think that's the case. I think that story has started to go into the Jack, Phyllis, and Diane triangle, and it's not that entertaining. It's not that engrossing. It's also kind of just spinning its wheels because the Jack and Diane getting closer thing, it's kind of not working for me. I don't think there's any real investment to be made there. I mean, they could go there and bring us some interesting storylines with Jack and Diane back together, but would they with Josh Griffith's writing? No, they would not. And Phyllis and Nikki getting close, bonding because they hate Diane, that's not really working for me either. Those two suddenly just BFFs because they hate Diane. They're acting like they're people in their teens or their 20s. I just think that storyline's not going anywhere interesting either. So I can't even be invested in Diane. So there's nothing to be invested in with the show because certainly nothing else goes anywhere. How sick are we of these business stories, these boring, poorly plotted out business stories? Every week companies are merging, there's new COOs, new CEOs. Who cares? None of us care. Can we be honest with ourselves? They don't tell these business stories engrossing. Back in the 90s, maybe even the 80s, Bill Bell told some pretty great business stories because we were invested in the characters. That was the big difference. We were more invested in the characters than the companies. But There's no rhyme or reason to anything that's going on with these business stories. So there's no reason we would be invested in the business side of things or the characters involved in them, because it really goes nowhere. Everybody on this show just constantly changing jobs, changing career paths. It speaks more to Josh Griffith's bad writing. It's lazy, is really what it comes down to. He doesn't act like somebody who wants to keep his job, but CBS continues to let him do so. But worst of all, it brings me back to the Newmans and the aftermath of Ashland's murder, Nick killing him, even though the argument could be made self-defense. But of course, we go into the usual boring direction of Victor, the big bad villain who never gets brought to justice, who never loses. It's the reason this story has no stakes, because Victor never loses. It's why I said in July the aftermath was going to go nowhere, because we know nothing's going to happen to the Newmans really. So why even be invested in the story in the first place? This is the biggest issue, when there are no stakes in the stories. And there is certainly no stakes with the Newman family, because it has all been done to death. It's repetitive at this point, and I have to become repetitive talking about it. And I don't know, I still think it's an unpopular opinion to a lot of Young and the Restless viewers for me to say that the Newman family sucks. But the Newman family sucks. It sucks at this point. We just get the same thing all the time. Victor covering shit up. Victor always getting his way. Whoop-de-doo. Nick, it hasn't happened a lot in recent years, but it's something that happened a lot in the past. Is Nick going to get back into the family fold or not? You know, Nick kind of always being the rebel to his father, but he always comes crawling back. We've seen this now dozens of times. Victoria at this point is just a miserable character to watch, because she's too much like her miserable father. Nikki finally has more airtime, but as I've already stated, she's kind of acting like a teenager with Phyllis, and their little friendship developing just because they hate Diane. And then there's Adam, the black sheep of the family. This story has become so redundant. I'm sick of it. I don't care anymore. This is what happens when you become too redundant and have a lack of stakes. You just don't care. Adam being the black sheep, always trying to prove himself, but always getting pushed away by the family. Adam can do wrong, but the rest of the Newmans act like their shit don't stink. I just don't understand how this is even enjoyable or rootable. And I don't think it's supposed to be rootable for the Newmans. But to have the whole family be unrootable doesn't make any sense to me. Because how is that? How do you invest in watching that when an entire family is unenjoyable? It's another reason why Emmerdale, a British soap opera, is also always low in my rankings. It's because they too have a family like the Newmans, called the Dingles, who are mostly just a bunch of people with a bad past, but they always seem to get their way, and it kills the stakes for the rest of the show. Both families suck the soul out of this show. It's true. The Newmans are just not enjoyable to watch, because it's redundant, because it's boring, because we always know where it's going, and where it's usually going is nowhere, because it's the same rinse and repeat shit we've been seeing from the Newman family, or about the Newman family, for decades now. It feels like the past 2 decades the Newman family has been going this way over and over and over. So what more can I say? Josh Griffith needs to go, but I've been saying this since I started my soap opera rankings last October. And we are now a month away from me doing this for an entire year, but Josh Griffith still has his job. Josh Griffith needs to be fired. I don't see Young and the Restless getting much higher in my rankings unless Josh Griffith is gone. Josh Griffith just writes a very unenjoyable, boring show. He had a chance to write more stories, and he did it for a few months, but he fell back into laziness, and CBS lets him be lazy. So what are we going to do about it other than fast forward his boring show?